I'd like to call to order strategic planning meeting for Monday, February 10th, 2020, our first strategic of our new term and new year. This roll call, Madam Secretary. Mr. Dempsey Lambert is absent, and Mr. Joel Robert also. He is on his way, running a few minutes late. We'll go ahead and we'll move on to the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please stand. Dear Father, please guide us in leaving. Please guide us in making smart, responsible choices for our constituents for the betterment of Assistant Parish. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to remind everybody, if you would like to comment on the field ordinance, what we'll be discussing tonight, please walk up to the podium and get yourself a sheet of paper, name, address, and so normally we'll let the public make their comments before the item. If it's okay with everybody else, I have a short presentation that I threw together over some ideas of our Mr. Robert's here. Our newly implemented field ordinance that was enacted September 2019. I'm going to go through it because there's a possibility maybe I could address some issues that people are having. So I'll run through my short little presentation, and then I will allow our public comment. And also, administration was nice enough. We have all of our big wheels from our planning department in the back who also has some information they'd like to share with us. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with a little presentation I threw together real quick. All right, so tonight I will be discussing some potential changes made to our Appendix 5, the drainage of the Unified Land Developmental Code for the parish. All right, so some topics that I would like to discuss tonight is that field used in minor and major developments has privileges on field that individual lots and commercial developments do not. Two topics on my PowerPoint agenda tonight almost go hand in hand. Homes and developments on small lots have the ability to allow field under their home to extend horizontally further indefinitely than the 24-inch limit that much larger individual lots and commercial development have to adhere to. When individuals or business owner use field, that field cannot extend 24 inches past the structure, then they must slope at no greater than a 3-to-1 ratio. So for every 3 foot it extends out, it can drop vertically no faster than 1 foot, 3-to-1 ratio. Developments are allowed to have the field from each home running to each other, from structure to structure, with no sloping for the increased runoff that is referred to for individual lots and also commercial lots. This allows acres and acres of developments to be built up 3 feet with no sloping between the homes. The second part of this is that the individual lot owners and commercial businesses cannot have their sloping within 10 feet of any property line. Minor and major developments only have to keep the sloping from their field 10 feet away from the perimeter property line. So with the mitigation now required for any field brought within our floodplain for individual lots and commercial buildings and minor and major developments, why are we allowing less stringent field rules for developments? Two neighbors who have half-acre lots next to each other can each put a 3-foot house pad that does not extend 24 inches past the structure. Then they have to slope it down at a 3-to-1 ratio, and the field for both homes cannot be within 10 feet of their shared property line. If you put the same two neighbors in a subdivision where their lots are 1/4 of an acre, these neighbors can now allow their field under their home to run horizontally with no sloping all the way to their shared property line, and their field can meet. Homes and developments have the same increased runoff that is referred to as individual lot section of our drainage code. So here, I just have a little example at the top. It's nothing fancy, just something I threw together. The blue squares will represent homes in a development or a neighborhood. And you can see a 3-foot fill, and a lot of these homes are roughly 5 foot, servitude, I'll give or take a little bit. So they're allowed to fill underneath these homes 3 foot continuously throughout. Now they do have the drainage study. They're mitigated, but also with the individual and commercial lots example shown at the bottom half of the screen, which we also have to mitigate now, is a 3 foot max pad, a 3-to-1 sloping ratio, and their sloping, the fill sloping cannot be within 10 feet of their property line, so there has to be a 20-foot gap there in between the sloping. Compaction tests. Individual lot owners and commercial lot owners must have a compaction test done for every 12-inch lift added per 1,000 square feet they add to their property. If a homeowner has a house and a separate garage built on separate pads consisting of 2 foot of fill, this requires at least 4 separate compaction tests that must be completed. Minor and major developments are required to have a compaction test per 12-inch lift added per 1,000 feet on only 10% of all home sites in the development. If a development has 40 homes with 2-foot pads in it, only 4 of those home sites will have a compaction test completed. 36 home sites will have been untested for proper soil compaction. This could lead to very serious foundation issues for homeowners in the future. All right, and this kind of leads into another topic, is our 3-foot max fill within our floodplain. So this is a house located in District 2, off in the Highway 22 area. This house was built 2016. I know it's kind of blurry here, but if you look at the arrow on the right side right there, it's a 5-foot, what I consider a chain wall foundation. So what these homeowners decided to do, at the time, they could have built a 4 or 5 foot dirt pad and did the sloping, and I believe over 36 inches, they would have had to mitigate that dirt. But they could have went with the 5-foot dirt pad, the huge sloping. What they decided to do was go with the chain wall foundation, build up the house 5 foot with the steps, and they have and that's a concrete foundation under that house. It's not on pier beams or anything like that. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see I just kind of drew some lines for the major sloping that would have been present, that would have had extreme runoff onto neighboring properties and effects on houses that had been there for 15 or 20 years. Here's kind of another picture. It's engineered. There's a slab there, and it has cinder blocks and rebar are there built up. And at this point, they went back. They backfilled the whole foundation with sand, and they went back, roughed in their plumbing, and they did their footings. And there was a concrete foundation that they put on top of that. I'm just doing some quick math on this. So the way our new fill ordinance is interpreted is that there's a 3-foot max and fill. After 3 foot, you have to either go pier beam or a chain wall, and we kind of left that open for interpretation. We didn't exactly define chain wall. Does a chain wall construction have to be hollow, or can it be backfilled with sand like the example that I just showed? And so I just did some quick numbers, and to say that these are 100% precise, something I did real quick, but they are very, very close. The same 2,000 square foot home, had this same 2,000 square foot home been built on a 3-foot pad and a 1-foot concrete slab poured on top of the pad, then dressed with sloping around the outside, going from the 3-foot height of the house pad to the natural ground, with the minimum required 3-to-1 ratio, then this house would have taken roughly 406 cubic yards of fill in the 100-year floodplain to be elevated 4 foot. Built as is, this 2,000 square foot home required approximately 370 yards of fill in the foundation, eliminating extreme sloping that's harmful to existing neighbors at lower elevations, while also being elevated 1 foot higher than my first example I give right here, than the previous example. And this home could not have been built with concrete foundation, option 1 per the 36-foot max fill. The cost of the homeowner. Contrary to the $10,000 numbers given by developers at meeting, this homeowner came out of pocket roughly $5,000 more than had he put a 4-foot dirt pad, which is not even allowed anymore, with a 1-foot concrete slab surrounded with a 3-to-1 sloping. He saved tens of thousands of dollars on a large dirt pad and sloping. This homeowner was able to build his concrete foundation home for minimal cost while elevating his home to meet the required elevation responsibly. Achieved higher elevation with less fill inside of the floodplain. Example 2, and it's very similar. This is in the Santa Mar area. So this house built 2019 prior to the new fill ordinance, but it meets all of the new fill ordinance codes. And so what they did right here, instead of building a big 4 or 5 foot dirt pad, they put a minimal dirt pad. I know the blue line to the left of the screen is kind of hard to see, but in the foreground behind the trees, that's an existing 20, 25-year-old home that this home is not affecting with the huge dirt pad. And then on the right, you can kind of see the arrows. But this home is built on a 3-foot, what I consider chain wall foundation. And this home, it was built before the new fill ordinance was in place, and it is elevated to BFE +2. He did that for his flood insurance purposes, was much cheaper. The homeowner chose to put a smaller dirt pad, which was roughly 20 inches, and he built up his foundation another 36 inches. He had minimal dirt sloping for a total of 776 cubic yards. The home was elevated roughly 4.5 foot above natural soil to meet BFE +2. Had he built a 3-foot pad, a 1-foot concrete slab, skirting, it would have been 812 yards. But he still wouldn't have been 6 inches short of the necessary elevation had he used more fill. So this is an example I'd like to show of more defining the chain wall foundation to, is that chain wall foundation, is that calculated in the 36 inches max that we can go? Is it not calculated in the 36 inches? And just to clarify it up, because these people went out of their way to build more responsible for their neighbors and had less impact on the neighbors than had or always been. Let's see, allow the numbers to dictate. So what I would like to discuss tonight is allow citizens in the 100-year floodplain to go up past the 36 inches of fill inside the foundation of the home if it can also be mitigated or is mathematically eliminated from the outside of the farm, taken away from the dirt pad that would have been on the house and or all the sloping around it, which is equally as harmful to existing neighbors. In many cases, in the low-lying areas, residents could still have the option to have a home with concrete foundation instead of on the piers. Only option would need to elevate higher than 36 inches, while also responsibly protecting our delicate 100-year floodway. And here I just kind of threw a little example together. Again, it's kind of hard to read on here, but the sloping on the bottom right of the screen, I got like a 1 to 3 foot mark right there. And so what I would like to entertain us discussing is that sloping. You know, if instead of a 3-foot pad with a 3-foot sloping down with that 3-to-1 ratio, instead of all that fill on the outside of the farm and the dirt pad potentially underneath it, is if we allow people to go up higher than 36 inches total, but either we can add that to the mitigation, or we can mathematically subtract about the filling outside of the sloping and whatnot. Just give ourselves more option in the 100-year floodplain to build when you have to go roughly 4 foot without forcing people to be on piers, while also protecting the floodway. As you know, as the fill ordinance is a very good start and was meant to do, and I just think we can make a few modifications to it. And that's all I have. Let's see, public speakers. Michael, would you like to address us now? All right. We have Councilman Michael Mason, who would like to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your time. One of the things I'd like to discuss, and this is kind of one of the things that's plaguing my district right now, is the BFE +2. We've actually have and it's on Delamarchon Road. We have a group of houses that were built before this ordinance was passed, and now I'm having another one built, well, I'm not, but the subdivision's having another one built in there, and it's gonna be substantially higher than the rest. The variance process right now is pretty arduous. It is very difficult to get a variance approved, and I understand rightfully so, you don't want it to be too easy. But I was wondering if maybe we could do, if you guys could look into something about maybe instituting like a grandfather clause or something. If the rest of the subdivision is at a certain level, can we have the new homes that are being built maybe done the same way? Or can we find a way to kind of make the variance process a little bit easier if certain circumstances are met, such as the rest of the homes are all gonna be one level and this house is gonna be 2 feet higher than the rest? That's kind of just my concern. I'm not 100% on the answer. I want to leave that up to you guys, and you guys are handling this, and I trust you guys with the process. So if you could look into something like that. I know other people are going to come speak tonight, but I just wanted to kind of address that and just let you know where we're coming from and see if there's anything you guys suggest.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you there, Councilman Mason. If anybody would like to speak, there's slips up there on the podium. If you could please hand them to Miss Jessica right here, and we'll call you up. You can call him up, Jessica.
Are they going to say your name wrong? Mr. Leonard Kapowski? Oh.
I commend you. This is the same process at the state capitol. It's kind of funny how you had the white, green, and red cards. But my name is Leonard Kapowski. We do government relations work. One of our clients is the Louisiana Manufactured Housing Association, and about maybe right after Christmas, we were made aware of some changes to these changes that the parish is going through to the floodplain requirements for elevation of all structures. So as it relates specifically to the manufactured housing industry, which I think there's about 3 or 4 retailers who sell extensively into Ascension. They're located in Ascension and sell into Ascension. Previously, we could get into the nomenclature and it'll get a little confusing. So I'm gonna try not to confuse myself, let alone confuse anyone else. But traditionally, the definition of a finished floor had been the finished floor inside of the house. As it relates to floodplain elevation, go back previous to this, it was, if you remember, if you're not, I have some pictures, some diagrams that I pulled offline. If you look the way a manufactured home is structured, there's the house, there's a finished floor, then there's a steel floor sill undercarriage. So what you're looking at is about 2 feet from the bottom of that to the finished floor. I'm trying not to, I'm trying not to confuse me. So so even in the Restore program, giving an example, it was 1 foot below the bottom of that I-beam. So you had 2 feet, 1 feet, so it's 3 feet from the finished floor. That was okay when you look at the structure and how it's put together and then engineering and what it would take to elevate that house on a pier system. That was okay. With 2 feet, it throws it into a whole other classification. So now it throws it into twice, to go that height, the engineered recommendations for installation call for a completely different installation structure. So with this, now you're looking at almost 4 feet. Okay, give or take a little bit, please. I'm not by far the expert on this. But now you're looking at another foot, so you're looking at 2 feet plus to the bottom of the I-beam. And that's, I'm talking from the finished floor of the interior of the unit. Now you're 4 feet. So I totally understand and respect participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. I totally understand lowering flood insurance costs for residents. Totally understand and respect that. We just ask that maybe in the creation of this ordinance, maybe there was just a particular element as it relates. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah,
So
yeah,
get out of here.
yeah. No, but
So-
thank you. I do share your concern. It is something that I plan on discussing in our topics tonight.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, if it's all right with you,
sure.
I'd gladly grant Mr. Kapowski
Yes, sir, very good.
an extra minute.
Yeah, yeah. Go
Finish
ahead.
Sure.
His presentation.
Yeah, so the planning department, Mr. Fournier and some of his staff, a number of his staff, were kind enough to meet with myself and some of our local retailers, who unfortunately, we didn't know about tonight's meeting. They're in Florida, they were unable to attend, so I came in their stead. Maybe there could be a time that we could meet with one or two, whoever y'all would suggest, and I could bring in some more of the technical side of this that could give maybe a greater understanding of just how onerous and costly that this 1 foot throws the whole installation into. So we're not asking to get away from this. We're just asking that if we could just look at the differences and the benefits of the 2 foot requirement versus the 1. And we did have some questions, Jerome and I, when we were in that meeting about, well, what if there's another flood and there's a road home program or a restore program? Are these folks that aren't 2 feet above base flood elevation to the bottom of the I-beam, are they, well, they're going to be thrown out? Well, I did some research, and we have some final flood elevations that were taken, some certificates. It was 1 foot. I didn't know that off the top of my head, but it was 1 foot. So it gets extremely costly and just throws the installation into a whole other ball field, that extra foot. So I'd ask right now, I want to sit down so everybody else can speak, what would be the process to move from here to another step? Like, what could we do to,
Yeah. I mean, that's something that we're going to discuss tonight.
Okay.
And it would be something that we would motion on to move forward.
Okay.
Or and which I don't know if I'll tell you, I don't know if any of that's going to come from tonight's meeting, but I wanted to introduce this discussion.
Sure.
And so our field ordinance, it's only roughly 4 or 5 months old now.
Right.
So we're all just kind of, getting our feet wet with it. And it was a great start. And there's a lot of good stuff in there for us. But, when something's new, it's never perfect the first go around. So, so that's what this meeting is, for healthy discussion. And, I hope to hear anybody who has concerns on something I spoke about or not. But, yeah, I mean, our conversation will continue tonight.
Okay.
And, and I will tell you, the mobile home elevation is on my topic list, because essentially we moved everybody else's home up 1 foot, and we moved up mobile homes 2 foot whenever we did this. And I do understand that. I know there's a 48 or a 52-inch rule. Once a mobile home gets like 54 inches,
sir.
then it's twice as many blocks every so often.
Right.
And it goes from $2,000 to move a mobile home to $4,000 or $4,500, because it's a lot more labor and material. And I understand all of that. And that's what this, I'm lucky enough to have our planning department back there who's
Right.
going to weigh in on their options. They and they know some technical legal stuff from fire marshal and FEMA that we may not have control over, and that's what this conversation is for.
Correct.
So I appreciate your concern, and I do share it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
By the way, Mr. Kapowski, that was more than that minute,
Oh.
but we're okay.
So I have to relinquish time back to you?
Perfectly fine.
Okay.
Bailey Shivers?
Hello, thank y'all for hearing us tonight. I'm Bailey Shivers with Shivers Brothers of Louisiana, and here with concerns I'm building all the houses on Delamarche Road. And currently, we're in flood zone X, and now we've required to go up 2 feet, which we've been going 1 foot above the BFE there, with paying a premium for the land. And now we have few lots where we have a house and a house. And then I got a vacant lot in the middle, which we're currently starting, and we're literally up on almost to the windows on the neighbor's house. And was curious to see if this new ordinance was more for stuff that was not in flood zone X, or if it was intended for land that was actually in flood zone X, which does not require flood insurance.
That's a very good question. That I'd love for planning and zoning to comment after we. I am aware of your situation, Mr. Mason. I know has been taking some calls, Councilman Mason, and so it, yeah, right, and it and it is something that we're aware of, because I understand that them homes are actually pretty close together as well, so they're roughly a foot higher than if you're building a house a foot higher than two existing houses, but I do know we have a variance process. I don't know if it's intended to allow a home to be built lower than our expectation. I think it was more intended for if you had a street of homes that had 10 or 15 homes on it, and all of these homes were built on dirt pads and slabs that maybe exceeded this 36 inches, but if, I don't know, if there's 10 homes there and there's one empty lot in the middle, that neighbor could apply for a variance, say, look, all my neighbors are built up this high, I won't be impacting them because they'll be higher than me. I think that might have been the intention of the variance process, but I don't know that to be exactly, fact. I don't know. I'm sorry. Oh, excuse me. And I don't know. I guess it's tricky with flood zone X going, because Della Marshall, I know there was, I was born and raised about a mile from there, so I know what kind of high, dry land that is.
Right.
But, no, I mean, that is something, I'm accepting everybody's comments, but at the same time, I might have to have a little back and forth with planning. We're taking notes. Hopefully all y'all comments will address. And whatever isn't, addressed and fixed tonight, it is something that we're going to continue to have conversation about to try to hash out all of these details, because we're just feeling the ill effects of this new fill ordinance.
Right.
So
Well, I know it can't be solved tonight, but, the house that we're doing is sold and formed up, and we've kind of stopped to wait and see. I guess more or less, if it was intended for stuff that was in the hazardous flood zone that requires flood insurance, or if it was not intended for stuff that was high and dry flood zone X, it does not require flood insurance.
What is the answer that you've gotten from the planning department?
That we got to go 2 foot.
As of now, that's the answer.
Okay.
Sadly, I mean, that as of now, that's the answer. Until we get the opportunity to bring it before this committee and then move it to the full council for a full vote, that's where we are, unless planning can come up with something different, to bring to us. But I mean, sadly, this was something we've inherited,
Oh, okay.
and we're kind of stuck with what the rules are in place at this point. Now, trust me, a best friend lives in that subdivision, in that plot out there, okay? I'm gonna look into it as much as I can, and as well as I know that the other 3 members up here will as well, because Chase is right. There were some inconsistencies in the development of that particular fill ordinance. A lot of times, we're trying to put a Band-Aid on a major problem. And that's where we've gotten into trouble with in the past with this, with our parish, with the government, is that we try to put Band-Aids on problems, and we're not thinking 2, 3, 5, 10 years into the future. We want to just address it now and move on. And I can tell you that this group of guys to my right, and definitely Mr. John to my left, as well as the other members of the council, we've made ourselves a pact that we're looking not for immediate solutions, but for 10-year solutions, lifetime solutions, generation solutions. And we're going to get to you guys as soon as we can. But sadly, right now, we're stuck with the rules that were handed to us.
Mr. John, speak. Ms. John?
I agree with Chase's comments. This was something that was done in previous council, but a lot of good was done.
Certainly.
In that. And that's what we have now. And I think he's accurate in saying that we have so many different views.
Scenarios.
If we're going to start granting waivers, if we're going to start giving people grandfather clauses to get them in, you got to look at a lot, legal ramifications. I mean, were we opening the parish to a lot of lawsuits? We don't know. So this discussion is good, it's lively, but there's a whole lot more to it, I think, going forward, but I just want to make that point. Legal ramifications are going to be critical as well.
I guess just to echo what they were saying, I have a lot of points on here that I would also like to discuss. I think that will answer a lot of your questions that you are asking. To answer your question about what should you do, should you wait? Obviously, I mean, it would be great if you could wait, but there's no way we could tell you yes or no, or that it will ever be done.
Right.
Yeah, but we want to make a common sense solution that works best. In my opinion, I don't necessarily agree with the 2 foot over, but that's my opinion, and that's all that is. We'll discuss some of that and why I get that, but,
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can tell you that there's nothing that this committee up here can do about that tonight. It's just, it is.
So I can't go pour in the morning a foot lower.
No, I'm sorry. No.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I know. Look, and I understand the concern there. I know, as we see all the time, whenever homes are a foot or two lower than new built up homes, there's always some issues there. But this is, I mean, we're all taking notes here. This is something that we're going to sit down with our planning commission and with legal and have talks about what can and can't we do, because we're running into issues like this for the first time. This really just took effect in the last quarter of 2019. So we're just kind of seeing what kind of issues and problems maybe we could run into. And I don't know if we're going to have a solution for all of them, but we're going to try.
I think the biggest thing is to find out about the flood zone X property. That's generally premium property that you pay a lot bigger dollars for versus something else that you might, could build up to some degree.
All right, and I would, and so just off the top of my head, I mean, a solution I know that I used on my home, for kind of the same issue, was a drop brick ledge. I mean, that eliminates the fill, the sloping. And you can make the drop brick ledge is very popular, and it is an option. But I do think there is a potential to open ourselves up to a whole legal can of worms by allowing some homes to build below the BFE +2 in our floodplain and not allowing everybody to do it. But it is on our list, and that is, that's something that we'll talk about and address.
yeah, and we'll have some more meetings. You can reach out to the council office with any questions, but I think for tonight, whatever concerns you have, you put out there. If you need to contact us, our numbers are out on the website. I'll be more than happy to talk to you.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Shivers. Do we have any more speakers, Jessica? Okay.
Ms. Jamie Thompson?
I emailed y'all earlier this afternoon. I'm here as a business owner for home standby generators. It's kind of a different field, don't have anything really to do with the fill, but we are being affected because of the base flood elevation plus the 2 feet. A generator, I'm assuming, is one of those structures. I'm not sure if air conditioners are considered a structure. If you put a new air conditioner onto an old home that is below, I'm not sure if that's the same situation or not. It's not my business as far as that. I'm here for the generator business. But my home, let's just say I am in an X flood zone, and the X is a big deal because I bought my land because it was X, and it did not flood. So I don't have to have flood insurance, but I can get it if I want. But if I want a generator, let's say my base flood elevation is at 44 feet. And my house is built at 44 feet, but now I have to raise my generator at my home 2 feet. So that is substantial, even though all of my neighbors are the same height as me. But I've got this generator now on a stand that has to be dealt with underneath it. It has nothing to do with drainage. It has nothing to do with drainage. An air conditioner has nothing to do with drainage. It's not going to affect it whatsoever. So I understand some things with the fill and the drainage issues and getting all of that water to run, and you don't want it running to your neighbors. But, previously, and I do know it's not y'all, it was the council before, so I'm not blaming. I just would like this somehow in the future to be better. We were putting them at floor height, even if it was 12 inches. We would raise the concrete up and we would make it floor height. So it would look good, so water wouldn't get in it. Whenever most people that did flood and are getting generators, they are wanting it raised. That's great. I don't want, a $10,000 product, I don't want it to flood either, because if it floods, it's gonna be garbage. So, I get that. But if there is X flood zone, there's no problem with flooding. Why? I don't understand it. I would love it to be changed because it is adding a tremendous cost to our customers. You look at anybody that wants it now in this parish, you're adding at least $300 for the certificate of elevation because it has to be at the site of the generator. You just can't take a certificate of elevation for your home that you get when it's built. It has to be specific. And, excuse me, I'll be done in just a second.
Continue,
It
it's
has to be
fine.
specific. And you're adding that cost, and you're also adding the additional cost of a stand. You cannot just put a generator on a wood stand because of the fire hazard of it. You can't do that. It gets so hot. It has to be made of steel or aluminum, and that is costly. You just added $1,000 or more to that $8,000, $9,000 generator. So it is costly. Customers that I do understand that it is a luxury item and everybody doesn't need it, but it's adding additional cost and it's affecting me because I'm not getting the jobs and the customers that I need. So, thank you. I appreciate you listening to me.
Thank you. Just off the top of my head, my house was built, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, but on mechanical on the outside of the house, maybe Mr. Jerome or somebody, is that BFE or do air conditioners and generators also have to be at BFE +2 now? +2? Okay.
ACs and generators are any utilities.
Ms. Jamie, that's something that I'll also add to the list for us to discuss for the future. If there's no other public speakers, I would invite. What about you, Darren? Would you like to talk first? No. Or y'all don't all jump up at once.
I'll kind of start. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, parish president. Just to give you a little background here, and I know we covered this a little bit, but on September 5th of last year is when the ordinance changed and went before the council. It was limited to 3 feet with an average of 4 feet elevation on fill for subdivisions, right? Individual parcels have to be at 3 feet, all right? That's the limit of fill that they have to have on their property. They can't have any more. Prior to that, we allowed as much fill as you could have on parcels that were greater than a ½ acre in size, but anything over 3 feet had to be mitigated. So now we're limiting it to 3 feet period, and all fill has to be mitigated, regardless of how high it is, all right? Those property that cannot build because of fill limitations, basically we're trying to encourage pier and beam type construction, right? So that's it. The change to the base flood elevation requirements, all buildings must be placed at 2 feet above BFE, including those in the X zone, as we heard here tonight, all right? All buildings in the parish must file an elevation certificate, including those in the X zone, all right? Exemptions are granted to those properties with a preliminary plat that includes a drainage study. So if you had a preliminary plat that was approved prior to the implementation of the ordinance, and it had a drainage study, you can work under the old ordinance, right? And it's 1 foot over BFE. Exemptions were granted to those projects with individual lots. So as long as they had commissioned a study, the architectural drawings, things of this sort, prior to the implementation of the ordinance, they were granted 60 days to come in and pull a building permit, get their project done, right? So we have many exemptions under this program, right? So those are the things. I wanted to introduce, I have Marcy Shivers, who our certified floodplain manager here to answer questions related specifically to FEMA issues. Lance Brock is our zoning administrator. Eric Poshi is our senior planner, who's been dealing directly with some of the property owners here. And Darren, as you noted, is our chief building official. And he has a really interesting presentation on what chain wall construction is, right? And I think that'd be really informative for you as well as our constituents, all right? The 2-foot elevation requirement, I wanted to get into that. We get points for our community rating system, which is our insurance rating system, by implementing standards that are above the baseline, right? Before, we had 1 foot over BFE. Going to 2 foot, we get extra points in our flood insurance program for that, all right? Implementing those rules in the X zone, we got additional points. Whether it's worth the points we had is up for debate, but we do get extra points for those, all right? And so that was one of the reasons. Additionally, we had a lot of property owners after the 2016 flood who applied for restore money from the state. The state HUD, through HUD money, this is federal and state regulations, require you to be at 2 feet over BFE in order to qualify for restore money. We had a lot of people who came into the parish later. They had already rebuilt their homes, and then they didn't meet the requirements, so they were not eligible for restore money. That was one of the considerations that we put through when we put the 2-foot BFE requirement, right? It's a FEMA regulation. When you look at motor homes, the bottom of the I-beam is considered the base, all right? And it's measured from there. That's a FEMA regulation, not a parish regulation, right? So with that said, I'm open to any questions or have members of the staff that come up.
I thought the top of the I-beam was the base on the mobile homes.
It's the bottom of the I-beam, yeah. And I think
So the bottom of the I-beam needs to be, okay, yeah, that's right, I got you.
Yeah. I think what they're trying to do, Councilman Robert, is that they're trying to protect the equipment that's between the floor and the bottom of the I-beam. There's piping, there's insulation, there's everything else that's under the trailer there, and I think they're trying to protect that from flooding.
Sure.
Councilman
If I
Cagle.
may. Jerome, you mentioned the points
Correct,
when we raised it to BFE +2.
correct.
Now, we got points, but also didn't that reduce premiums for those
Well,
who have flood
as you
insurance?
get, right now, we have a rating of 8. We're trying to accomplish a rating of 7, but in order to do that, we have to have another audit, and we're looking to have that done within, let's say, the next year or so. And once we do that audit, they'll look at all the requirements that we've installed, including the 2-foot BFE, that type of thing. And we do get a few points for being in the X zone, having those requirements in the X zone. Again, how much is it worth it is another issue, and we'd be happy to discuss that with you at length.
And I would just like to comment on the flood insurance with the BFE +2. A big reason why we did that was for the flood insurance. In 2016, I built a home, and on the advice of my insurance agent, I went BFE +2, and it took roughly 60% off of my flood insurance premium. That extra foot, I forget exactly the X amount of dollars it cost, but like 4.5 years, I would have broken even and been saving money. A lot of people ask why the +2 was involved in the field ordinance. But I was handed this before the meeting, where the state fire marshal, the base flood elevation is the lowest floor on a mobile home. The lowest floor should mean the bottom of the longitudinal chassis frame beam in A zone, and the bottom of the lowest horizontal structure in V zone. And it's dated 2009. That hasn't always been the case, right?
I'm not sure of that, but just for clarification, we don't have any V zones in the parish.
Right.
V means velocity, and you're looking at places like Grand Isle where they have wave action and really a lot of, water movement. We don't have that in the parish, so we're really dealing with just the A zone here.
All right. I used to own a mobile home 2014, and whenever I set the mobile home, the bottom of that I-beam, I put it at base flood elevation.
Right.
it's, you know, almost 6 years ago, it wasn't BFE plus 1 back then, but it's BFE plus 2 now. We essentially picked up mobile homes 2 foot. And I'm just curious if there's an explanation of exactly why we did that, because I know it is costly on people with mobile homes.
I can ask Mr. Brock.
Part of it,
Or
Chase, had to do with
Marcy can
FEMA's
explain
definition
that a
of
little better than
where that line was at the bottom of the beam.
Good afternoon, how you doing? I'm Marcy Shivers, the floodplain manager. What was your question again about the 2-foot rule?
At the bottom of the I-beam of a mobile home, has that always been the lowest floor grade in the parish, or?
Well, previously, on the previous ordinance, it was at base flood elevation, and it should have been the 1 foot, but it was never enforced. So when we did our audit in 2016, it was noticed that we were not getting those additional freeboard points only because we were not enforcing the 1 foot freeboard, because the I-beam was considered the lowest floor, and we were also not getting points for the lowest elevation of machinery, being at the plus 1 foot. With the new ordinance that came out in September, that was 2 of the biggest issues that we wanted to make sure that we were getting points for. Again, Ascension Parish right now gets about $240,000 insurance premiums. You know, we may not think that that's a lot, but looking into other areas, and Livingston currently not being in the CRS program, it really is a big deal. We're really pushing for the residents that is in a special flood hazard area to get a 10% discount on their insurance premium, and the ones that are in X zone to get a 15% discount on their flood insurance premium. So right now, the main goal is just enforcing the new ordinance. Yeah, there are some kinks that we can fix, but right now we're enforcing that per HUD FEMA standards. The bottom of the I-beam is considered the lowest floor. And under the new ordinance with the 2-foot rule, the bottom of the I-beam has to be 2 feet above the base flood elevation or the adjacent base flood elevation.
All right, so if we went back to the old way and made the, I guess off the calculation, if we made it BFE plus 1 right now on a mobile home on the bottom of the I-beam, we would lose FEMA, we would lose points there.
Yeah, we wouldn't get points. We'll get some points, but we won't get as many points. You know, again, as Jerome said, right now we're at an 8, working really hard towards a 7. There are some things that we're looking at, designating coastal areas in Sorrento. We're also working on the master land use project, the 5-acre parcels right now. So we are looking at areas to get additional points. Maybe when we get those areas and designate those areas, we can consider taking the properties with X zones to be 2 feet adjacent BFE.
Okay. And we do have a variance of a program right now. I mentioned an example earlier about a homeowner potentially, you know, maybe putting a 5-foot dirt pad and a 2-foot slab to match existing homes that look like that. Is that something that we would possibly even consider right now?
Well, there is a caveat in the ordinance that says you can't apply for a variance. The variance has to be based on engineering standards, and it has to be signed off by 3 individuals in the parish, the planning director, the Department of Public Works director, and the drainage director, right? So
Okay.
all 3 of those people have to sign off saying that it's not detrimental.
That sounds easy.
Or-
That sounds easy.
Yeah, right. So we have had 1 since the ordinance was placed, so that was it. Right.
Okay.
I've got a question for you about the insurance premiums.
Yes, sir.
Before, it was standard, or it was a policy to where you could mitigate any drainage for building up within a flood zone or anywhere in the floodplain. Now, it was matched 0 to 0, meaning you basically make up for whatever effect you had. If we were to look at doing something with the code or with regulations to where we said, instead of saying you had to mitigate to where you didn't have an effect, you actually have to mitigate to where, say you have 6 inches more retainage for that property than you did before. Would that hurt the insurance as far as dealing with any homeowners?
I wouldn't say that it would so much hurt the program, but you would get more points for having all field mitigated. Right now, FEMA's pushing that, you know, no field should be placed on a property, but we definitely get those points to have all of the field mitigated that's on the site.
So we could get a lot of those points just by having that mitigated and.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's all I have as far as for the elevation, Miss. So I don't know, anybody else have anything for Ms. Macia? Thank you.
Good discussions.
Yeah, I've got something.
Okay, I do have one, tough topic, that was, in my little PowerPoint presentation, was the ability for developments to have, these homes are close together, they're, anywhere between, I don't know, 10, 15 feet apart total. Their ability to have this endless horizontal fill, house to house, and Joel and I, if we live next door to each other, we each have an acre of land. We're not allowed the same capability, but we also have to mitigate the fill that we do have. So I guess I was just curious if maybe we had any comment on that. Is that something?
I'll just give some kind of overview on that. When we do a preliminary plat for a big subdivision, it basically is different than individual parcels. And I think the property that the gentleman was talking about on Delamarchand, that was done under a simple division, and they did not have to do a drainage study for that particular subdivision, right? Because a simple division is a subdivision, just like a preliminary plat's a subdivision, right? So you're subdividing property. So when a simple division occurred, it was on a public road, so they were able to come in and divide the property up to 10 lots, right? And when they did that, they just went through an administrative procedure. And with that, they did not have to prepare a drainage study, right? On the preliminary plats, we require a drainage study. It's a very detailed analysis of how they're going to accommodate any runoff, all the rainfall that appears on their property and everything else, all right? So that's one thing. Secondly, and I totally understand where you're coming from with individual lots having different elevations, and that's the case in that situation on Delamarchand, because we've got certain properties that pulled a building permit about a year, maybe 2 years ago, and they're at 1 foot over BFE. Now they're coming in for a building permit on a vacant parcel that's in between those, and now they're going to have to build a 2 foot over BFE. And that's just the way the ordinance works right now. So with that, I'm not sure of the solution in terms of, unless they've done maybe a simple division, we can kind of look at the code, how it's applied right now, and maybe come up with some suggestions to you. But as of right now, they're having to comply with the ordinance.
In our land developmental code, it states, I don't have the exact section and whatever. It states if you build something and it's proven by on-site analysis or whatnot by, I believe it refers to the parish drainage engineer, that if myself as a new home or development or business is shedding water affecting the existing neighbor, I'm responsible to fix that. A swell or if a potential fix would be. I've seen pictures of Delamarchand of some of the homes there. If my home slab is going to be 5 feet from someone's driveway, so according to this legally, I can't put dirt to the top of my slab and slope it to his driveway. So a solution there would be a drop brick ledge or an option like that. I do know it's hard to enforce that with some people, and I know it's a neighborhood, the houses are different elevations and whatnot.
Well, it's not just part of our ordinance that requires them to mitigate any rainfall or any drainage that appears in their lot. It's state law. So you cannot impact your neighboring property, with excess drainage, so that is state law. That's not just our code. Our code tries to accommodate that, by the rules that we put in place, but, they have to abide by that.
No, and as it pertains to what you're talking about with big developments, I don't feel like the big development should have it easier than the homes. I don't feel like we should build up from home to home. That's our problem, is filling up that base, because obviously the most that you fill up area at the bottom. With all of that said, there's ways that this can be done. Chase was bringing up a few of the issues with the chain walls and building up the foundation with the blocks and backfilling it with sand. Now, those are the types of ideas that engineering-wise, if proven and if looked at and can be just as effective, you can accomplish all of what we want to accomplish without going 2 foot above BFE anyways, without having to do the whole development. So now you can go up higher with the house, so you don't have all these homes sloping next to each other, so you don't have to build up the whole development. I think we can look at some different options like that, but I mean, something to look at and discuss.
Well, this might be a good segue to have Mr. Duplessis come up and show us his demonstration on what chain wall is and how we can implement that. That's okay with you?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Good evening. John can put it up. So this is just a kind of a technical perspective of chain wall foundations. You touched on a pretty good bit of it with the stuff you had in it. So yeah, this is gonna be hard to see up there, but this is kind of a different method you can use as far as footings. Obviously, all the way to your left is pier and beam. But if you move on over to the spread footing, you see that there's a concrete wall. So with a chain wall, there's basically going to be 2 different scenarios. You're going to have a solid poured concrete, which we call a stem wall. If you look all the way to the right top corner up there, that's basically what it is. You pour the footings and you go up, form it just like you would a normal foundation, and you solid pour that wall, then your slab will go on top of there. The next option would be it's just like you would do a block pier, but it'd be continuous all the way around the house and then within the perimeter. Then you would backfill with the sand. It's got to be compacted, and then, but also you got to remember that that fill that you put inside of there still falls in line with the fill that they were discussing. You know, max 3 foot. You brought up the point with the slopes. You're going to cut out a lot of that, but by the building code, you still have to have a 5% slope away from the foundation for drainage purposes. You know, water settling next to it, causing erosion, settlement issues, stuff like that. So you're still going to have some kind of backfill on the outside of there to where you keep that water from sitting right there on the foundation. So this basically goes into how it's put together. Basically, a chain wall is to build a slab when you need to elevate above existing grade level. Foundation stem walls can be constructed to the needed height and the interior filled with compacted soil. The stem wall can consist of reinforced concrete block walls on footings or cast in place concrete foundation walls engineered for soil conditions. So just like a pier and beam house, anything block height from the top of the footing to the top of the block, 48 inches is the maximum you can go without having it designed by an engineer. So that is another cost you got to associate with doing a chain wall foundation. So yeah, and then you still have the requirement of the moisture barrier that's got to be placed inside the slab. So we'll go on to the next. So basically what a stem wall or chain wall are structures that are used to connect the foundation of a building to its walls, predominantly constructed concrete footings with masonry walls, masonry just being the concrete that you're using. They rise above the ground level to provide a raised platform for placing the building slab. The structures require 3 components for the construction: poured slab, a foundation wall, and then a spread footing. But just like in a conventional slab, your wall sits on that footing. So basically, you're still going to have the footing that's down below the undisturbed soil. The block comes up, and then the slab would be on top of that fill, like we stated earlier. To construct a stem wall, you clean the site, you compact the subgrade, dig out and pour the footings, and then install the masonry foundation wall. So just like I said, the part that where it would differ from normal would be when you start stacking the blocks. So at that point, you would determine the height you need to go. Now, some instances you may, if you got a lot that you don't have to fill in the whole thing, you may be able to build up 2 or 3 foot on one side, and you still can conventionally do the other side. That was the whole intention of doing chain walls. If you got sloping lots, you can build up one lot without having to fill the whole thing in. You just build up that section that you needed to be filled up on that lower end. And that was the next point for the slope lots. I got some pictures that'll kind of show you. So if you look at the top right-hand corner, that would be that drop brick ledge scenario that Chase had mentioned. That is not necessarily considered a chain wall. That would it's just a raised foundation at that point. Now anything underneath that slab would still be considered fill at that point. So just like with the instance you see on the left, with the footing down below, and you have that unbalanced, the backfill inside the blocks, and then you're sloping. That kind of shows what I was explaining. With the fill, you got to bring back in to keep the drainage away from the structure. But that's just some examples of how they form up these chain walls. There is the option, if you pour the wall, you still can go with a wood floor. I would just throw that in there. It's not just for slabs. You can still use that wood floor option. I just wanted to put this on there. This is a house similar to the one Chase showed with the drop brick layers. So that's a pretty standard layout that you see a lot in the houses in Ascension Parish, that Acadian style. So it's feasible here. This is just a zoomed in version of the pictures that we had earlier. It shows just the steps going up, and then the slab, of course, is on top of the blocks. You got your footings down below, and then the fill inside of there. That's just another of the drop brick ledge. And that's the same picture we saw with the slope. Now this is them finishing it. So if you notice, that slab substantially higher than most of them you're going to see. This is an example of before you backfill it, you stack the blocks, you notice the rebar coming out. So everywhere where you see those blocks, that's interior bearing walls and things like that where you got to have these footings. If you notice, I don't know if you can see on y'all screens, but the top of those blocks are L-shaped. So what they do is they take a block and they cut it to where when they pour that slab, it runs over to the top and it fully connects the slab to those walls instead of just pouring it on top and having to form up with wood. This is another, just a demonstration of how we've seen some of them done. If you notice on that picture on the right, the fill is inside of there, so they've since poured the footings below the grade, stacked the blocks. At this point, they'll go back and backfill the blocks, spread the sand out, and they'll continue with the slab on top of that fill material. This is a house in the parish. The front of that is pier and beam, but the house itself, you can see it from this direction, that is a house that is approximately 3 foot off the ground on a chain wall foundation. Like I said, the front porch is on a pier and beam, but the rest of the house is elevated, built with chain wall construction. That's all I have. And if you have any other questions.
Yeah, so I have one big question. So I'm hearing kind of differing opinions, I guess, if you will, on the 36-inch fill. I guess I hate to put him on the spot. He's not here, but I had a conversation with O'Neill Parrington, or Council Legal, and he told me, and maybe Mr. John can back me up as a returning council member, is that the intent of the chain wall foundation was to allow them to go above 36 inches. He said his interpretation, his intent was, as and I'm not singling him out there as a group, I apologize, was that the chain wall option was to allow to put a 3 foot dirt pad and then put a 24, 36 inch chain wall foundation on top of that, allow you to meet 5-6 foot elevation in down Highway 22. And I know Mr. I'm not sure exactly how our planning, deciphers it, but that's not really an answer that I've gotten a clear-cut question. I'm sorry, that I've gotten a clear-cut answer from.
Yeah, that would be something planning would have to determine if that fill, which prior discussions, that fill inside of those walls is still displacing the water, so they do consider that as part of the field.
So 36-inch fill, and we figure 4-inch slabs,
Right.
4-inch slabs. So we're saying 40 inches. If you can't get BFE plus 2 in 40 inches, your only option is pier and beam.
That's how it's written now in the code.
Huh?
I'm pretty sure that's how it's written now in the code, yes. It's 36 is max fill, regardless of how you get it.
You're saying it's displacing more water on top of it, but, I mean, your house is on top of it, that's displacement.
Right.
too.
Well, I'm just saying, that's how in discussions, I had the same question as you know. Just like if you form up a slab now, you're forming up with 12 inches. You're displacing water 12 inches to start with. So if you go up 3 feet, plus, like Chase was saying with the farm, do you go 36 inches to the bottom of the slab, or is it 36 inches to the top of the slab?
Well, I think the idea of it is
That's
that
between, that planning would make that determination. They do a flood zone determination before we issue any kind of permits, so they determine, what measures they can and can't do at that point.
Yeah, and one thing I would like for all of us to kind of sit down and discuss is, okay, if I'm building I don't know, 2,000 square foot living house, say it's 3,000 square feet on the roof, and I go 2 feet all the way around it, I do my sloping. If we punch the numbers on that cubic yards of fill, right, and instead of capping me at 40 inches, if it takes 750 yards of dirt to accomplish that 3-foot pad with the sloping around it, instead we give an option of you can do that, or you can put, in the example I had, you can put a 5-foot chain wall. We're allowing people to go higher than 36 inches, but mathematically, we're not putting any more fill in our floodplain. And we're also eliminating, the sloping, the runoff, as much runoff, to existing neighbors.
Correct.
And I would like, because a lot of the areas where we're running into, the elevation of the land currently is in that 4 to 5 foot range on the east side of Highway 431. And just some way, somehow giving people the option to exceed 36 inches, but being just as responsible as we intended to be whenever we, came up with this ordinance last year.
Right.
This is only a good idea to me if we eliminate the slope of the 3 to 1. That's a huge amount of dirt we're displacing. So by doing this, we're going straight up. We're not displacing all that water that was there before. And you can use engineering, you can do more footings, you can do deeper footings, you can do double block wall to support whatever structure you put inside of that. But I think that would be a key part, is you're not gonna have your 3 to 1 slope on top of 3-foot BFE on
Right.
top of that. But that's something we
Yeah,
can look at.
I agree. That would be something, we'd have to give a plan, and then, of course, that'd have to be amended in the ordinance. But
Right.
Nothing, other than the 4-foot, the 48-inch maximum height before engineering, but like you said, there's plenty of ways to do it. I mean, they do it with the pier and beam houses now.
That way we don't displace as much water, and that's kind of what he's saying. By me building building A and going higher off the ground without a slope, by putting a chain wall, I'm displacing A amount. And A is the exact same as I'm displacing, give or take a little bit. For
Right.
the other option, as far as not going up nearly as high, so you can't build what you want, and you're not really doing anything, because once you go so high, it doesn't matter anyway, because the water's not going that high.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to discuss.
Oh, yeah. Tim, anybody got anything for Darren? Appreciate it. Thank you. So I pretty much hit on, oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got some comments on a lot of the different things, not long, but a few of them. Okay. The first thing that I kind of want to address that bothers me is the fact that 100% of homes and developments are not tested for compaction as far as their foundation. I know in all of the different developments that I've done as far as friends or anything, and when I say that, I mean businesses, homes, I've had to do a compaction on all of them multiple times, sometimes. That's unacceptable. I mean, that's something that should be on us, safeguarding our people from going in there and, I mean, if you don't have a foundation, you don't have a home. I mean, you might as well just tear it down and start all over again. So that's something we could look at, is maybe implementing to where they all are measured for compaction, just like we do to our single homeowners. I think we can also, or need to look at possibly implementing, and we'd have to get together with administration, see if it's even feasible, see if there's money to do it, but we need to have inspections of any of the mitigated drainage that we already have implemented. And then we also can incorporate those inspections to any mitigated drainage in the future, meaning like these ponds that we allow people to do to mitigate this drainage, so they can build up a little bit, so this is gonna displace water. If these aren't working properly, then we just have a bunch of people building up a bunch of property that's flooding everybody, which is kind of what we're trying to stop from happening. You know, if we make people go out whenever they're doing these developments, whether it's a 2-acre development or a home or what, if you have to mitigate it to the point of doing any structure, it needs to be inspected. Now, I kind of touched on the whole building up entire developments. I don't necessarily agree that we should be able to build up a huge amount of acreage in an area that's dealing with those types of things. I think we should look at either building in an area that you don't have to build up so much, or doing like Chase was bringing up by doing the chain wall idea and not needing all that fill. The 2 foot above BFE, I think that's something we need to discuss, like everyone was saying. Is it worth the insurance points? That's something that in my mind, I don't necessarily know that I'm there yet. I think I need a little more convincing on that one. But this is gonna be a big deal, this fill ordinance. This fill ordinance has a lot of work to add to it. It's got a lot of customization because a lot of these different parts of this parish are not the same. I mean, with that said, I'm committed to moving forward. I'm committed we've had several business members out here, business owners. And a lot of the things that we're doing are hurting businesses, and I get it with the mobile homes and some of the restrictions and some of the guidelines. And we just need to take a step back. We need to look through the fill ordinance. We need to see where we can fix some things and accomplish the same stuff, as long as we achieve the same goal. But thank you. That's all I have on that, sir.
Going, good?
I look at things from the legal perspective. And I'm a little dismayed this evening with with what I guess is the initial discussion on what we're going to do to piecemeal and place Band-Aids on a fill ordinance that was created 5 months ago. I think government works best when we get together with legal, we get together with state and federal agencies, and we develop a plan, we develop a schematic that's going to work for the public. This situation we're dealing with tonight, a lot of great ideas. You know, the folks with the mobile homes definitely have an issue with the extra cost. Jamie with the generators definitely brought something to my eyes, because I was surprised that if I want to put a generator at my house now, I'm going to have to get an elevation study. I guess I'm going back to Lowe's and just buying 4 or 5 of those small ones to take the place of that big one. I appreciate the administration sharing its employees with us tonight and educating us. But the bottom line is if we're going to try to address something as huge as this fill ordinance, we can't do it by little baby steps throughout the process. We're going to have to get together, the 4 of us, plus Mr. Dempsey when he gets back from his shoulder surgery, with the individuals with the administration, and formulate a plan. Get legal involved. Last thing I want to do is create a plan that's going to allow the individuals in mobile homes to drop their requirement by a foot, and then all of a sudden it costs them thousands of dollars for homeowners insurance. You know, we got to make sure that everything is together and all aspects of this fill ordinance and of building is recognized. And right now, I think we're a little premature in trying to move forward with any modifications of that fill ordinance at this time. That's just my recommendations at this point.
All right, and I will also agree that I don't want to make any motions for recommendations today. My biggest goal for tonight was to, and I'm actually glad everybody showed up, was to get some fair, criticism of it, things we like, things we don't like. It's a brand new, big, important document that affects a lot of people, and obviously nothing is perfect. If I would have wrote it the first time, there would have been just as many issues, and so we made a list. Everybody who spoke, I think everybody who talked, are things that maybe ourselves in planning don't quite see exactly. We're going to spend the next 4 weeks. We'll get together. We'll hash ideas. We'll see legally, where we stand on all of that. But I do want to let you know that your concerns will be addressed. And I'm not going to make a promise, but hopefully in March maybe we'll have we'll have some literature, that we can put out and get some fillers on. See how it affects homeowners and developments, commercial lots. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. Thank y'all for coming. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Malone.